Are you mad, glad, sad, or scared? I'm scared to publish this episode. Hello, my friends, and welcome to the 199th episode of the Sales Podcast. I'm Wes Schaefer, the Sales Whisperer, your host. If you missed our last interview, go back to session 198, thesaleswhisperer.com/session 198. I had Alexander Obenhauer, super smart dude, launching some killer apps. It was the number one paid app in Apple last year, and now he is expanding into multiple other cool tools. I'm using one of them called Throttle, and it's around email and controlling your email, not getting a bunch of spam email filling your inbox, and how he launched, how he and his partner lived their dreams, how they turned down great paying jobs that he said would have sucked the life out of him in a cubicle. It's a really inspiring story, and you're going to want to track what this guy is doing. So head on over to thesaleswhisperer.com/session 198 to hear his story. Coming up next is my 200th episode, and I still have no idea what I'm going to do, but it'll be cool. So be sure to tune in on the next episode, number 200. Unbelievable. This week we have Mr. Steven Sisler. I've got his book sitting right here, The 4 People Types and What Drives Them. Mad, glad, sad, scared. This dude is kind of scary in what he can determine or see or read about a human being just from the assessments that he gives. And he does this all remotely. And so we dig into what really makes people tick and what makes you tick, and that helps you do a better job in whatever it is you do. But in the second half of this interview, I did an assessment, and he breaks me down like a shotgun. That's why I said I'm a little bit scared. I'm reading the notes here on the notes that I took from our interview, and I'm like, oh, wow, am I going to really publish that? Okay, here we go. So I'm also looking forward to speaking with Steven on the American Dream U speaking tour. I'm going to be in Oklahoma at Fort Sill in September, and then I look forward to speaking on that circuit a lot more often. I met the founder, Phil Randazzo, and what a great dude, what a great cause, helping our military veterans who are leaving the service and entering the private sector. So this is a free program that Phil has done for years, and it's just to help our veterans transition, make a smooth transition into a good career. So really looking forward to that and actually getting to meet Steven face to face. And I got a couple of little goodies since we last spoke. Head on over to whisperwebinar.com. I'm starting to do more live weekly webinars. Check that out. I'm working on the Make Every Sale live webinar, as well as the Fix Your Follow-Up Failure webinar. And so you can stay tuned to that. I will use that URL, whisperwebinar.com, to link to whichever one is coming up, and then probably have a landing page as well with a schedule of all of them once we get into a rhythm with that. But whisperwebinar.com. And now I have a mobile phone app. So if you head over to Wes app, so WESAPP.info, wesapp.info, you can get me in your pocket. It links to all the episodes. It links to my blog, even my Instagram account, all kind of stuff. So a couple new resources for you there. And now let's bring on Mr. Steven Sisler. Steve Sisler, for the first time ever, I may have a guest that makes me cry. I hope not. All the way from Dallas, Texas, welcome to the Sales Podcast. How the heck are you?
I'm good, Wes. Thanks for having me on.
So, man, I don't know what I got myself into here, but, you know, nobody can ever say I'm not afraid to test things on myself. You are the owner of a behavioral resource group, right?
Yes, sir.
And you are one of the leading experts in behavioral assessments, kind of getting into understanding what makes people tick. Is that a good synopsis?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I first got introduced to this really years ago. I mean, I was still in the Air Force 20 years ago, and then I took a small assessment back when I got my first real sales job, 1998, Oakwood Homes. I think back then they were colors like you were green or red or blue or yellow, I think were those. But I think a lot of people are familiar with DISC and Myers-Briggs, but would you mind telling our listeners a little bit more about yourself, how what you get into is different, and I'd say mo better, and then we'll actually turn the tables, and I did an assessment myself, and we'll have you break me down.
Okay, terrific. Yeah, what I do is I measure three things. We're measuring two on this particular show. I measure what people desire in the world or what they value. And I also measure their emotional framework because I focus on four primary emotions. I call them primary because they're the emotions that will regulate how you do something. So I'm measuring anger, optimism, patience, and fear out of those emotions. Of course, we have disgust and other emotions, but they're not really regulating you how you act every day. I take those two things, the passion palette, as I call it, which is based upon 7 motivators or drivers, or what I like to call attractors. What are you attracted to in the world? And I integrate them. And so what ends up happening is what you want and then what you actually end up doing many times are two different things. So your emotions that drive your behavior will trump what you want. In other words, there's a lot of people that want a raise, but they won't ask for a raise. There are a lot of people that want to be in control, but they won't take control. So there's all these different emotions that are going to basically regulate how you're going to do something. Once I have these numbers, I look at 11 numbers. When I have these numbers, then I will predict how you're going to work out in any given situation, what kind of relationship will likely work for you, and so on and so forth. So I work with companies in 18 countries. I work with the owner of the organization, and then I start from there and work my way down. I also measure an axiological framework, which are, what you pay attention to in the world. We're not doing that here, so I'm not going to get fully into that. But that's another piece. That's based upon Dr. Robert S. Hartman's HVP, the Hartman Value Profile. That's called axiology. And so those three things combined together is like putting a human being in an emotional MRI machine, if you're really good at reading it, which I am. So therefore, I'm able to really tell you why things aren't working, what you need to do to get them to work. So that's it in a nutshell.
Very cool. So I know you get pushback like, oh, I could take Myers-Briggs or a DISC test for $35 or $59 or $99. Mm-hmm. And to that you would say...
Yes, you can. You might get one for free. If you visit Tony Robbins' site, you'll get it for nothing. And that's fine. But that's not why people call me. People want to know what's going on. And I could here's an example. I had somebody say, I want you to profile my girlfriend. He was a business owner. And he didn't say much else other than that, and I did. And then when the report came through, he called me. And he said, before you talk to her, I want to know what you see. And I said, your girlfriend looks like she drowned or maybe was held underwater. And he said, oh, my God, she was when she was a mid-teenager, and it's really hurt her life, and now she's addicted to this and that, all from that incident. And I saw that on a DISC chart.
Good grief.
Yeah, and I could tell you stories like that till tomorrow.
Uh-huh.
So I am what some people call a seer. So there's people that do a weekend warrior workshop for $2,500 and now they're DISC certified. Then there's behavioral profilers, and that's me. So I'm a behavioral profiler. I'm not a DISC person. I use DISC to locate where your emotions are at, but that's the only reason why I use it. And I use the values frame set to figure out what you want out of this world. And once I combine those two, then we're really off to the races. And that's going to change everything.
Right. Can you elaborate on what being a seer means?
Well, it's knowing human emotion and how those emotions work with one another so well. In other words, Dr. Martin Molston, John Geyer from the 70s, these are people that were deep into human behavior and emotions, and they're what I call sleepers. There's not a lot of information around them, and you cannot get their books. But I've got some of them, and I intuitively know what took them years to figure out. And so I basically reference those guys based upon my intuitive insight. So I know more by accident than some people are trying to know on purpose when it comes to these things, which is why I'm in such demand now. So looking at a profile is one thing, seeing something in that about the person. Let me give you one other example. I had a person do this with me, and they said, "What do you see?" Less than a minute of looking at the profile, I said, "Let me guess, you were looking at pornography at work, and they fired you." He said, "Yeah, that happened on Tuesday."
Good grief.
Yeah. And very, very powerful. So people are working with me to get my insight on their numbers, not to do a disc graph.
Gotcha. So when you say seer, though, I mean, are you just saying you're just good at this and you can connect the dots, or are you saying it's like a channeler or a medium?
Yeah, I'm very good at this and I can connect the dots, but how did I know that woman had been tried to be drowned?
Uh-huh.
I can't answer that, neither can you. So there's that element, and I've been doing that since I was 12.
Cool.
So I have companies wanting me to be their business psychic. Now, I turn them down because I don't consider myself a psychic in any way, shape, or form. But when I look at profiles, it's like the movie A Beautiful Mind. You start putting things together, you see images.
Right.
And they come into my mind, and I say them because I know the feeling I get when I'm onto something. And it's life-changing for many people that do this with me. And so it's created a niche. And nobody is really navigating or nobody is really combining passions, behaviors, and how they see the world, both inner world and outer world, like I'm doing. I'm finding this out because people in the know are telling me this. Now I'm teaching people who've been doing this for years how to read them, because they really think they can read them. But, they could look at a graph and say, "Oh, you're very quick." I look at a graph, and this happened to me once. I said, "What happened to you when you were 10? Because something happened to you when you were 10, and the woman broke down crying. Come to find out, she was molested by her grandfather in their attic when she was 10 years old, and I saw it on a disc graph.
Very cool. And so do people come to you one-on-one? I see on your website, and I'm going to link to both, stevesisler.org and behavioralresourcegroup.com, but you've got the backdrop. It's like a large group. People look happy, so maybe you're not making all of them admit that they're looking at porn and getting fired. So it seems like for most people, this is a pleasant group experience. So for those that may be afraid to contact you, but I mean, are you doing this one-on-one? Or are you doing this primarily as a group?
Yes, I do both. We have events called the Jumpstarters Experience. Me and my partner, Michael Gebbin, work together with a small team, and we create the Jumpstarters Experience, which is you coming, being fully profiled, and then sitting down for a 2-day event where I explain how your brain works, how all this is working together, what kind of style you are, what that's going to mean for you. And we basically, for people that might feel stuck, they don't know what they're doing with their life right now, they just need to get over an edge, they need a tipping point. They come to this event, and we do that for them. And then we also have another program called Flow that a person can sign up for, and then wherever you are versus where you want to be or need to be, we'll get you there in 1 year. And that's a whole nother event. But that's an ongoing where there's several events you attend, there's calls that you'll receive, and you'll get what I call jugular coaching, which is it's pretty straightforward talk to get you where you need to go and help you understand why you're where you're at and what's going on and get you around it. Nice. So the events are really fun. Sure, nobody's singled out. It's nothing like that. But we've got people that come from London or wherever to experience this. And it really, you're going to gain more self-understanding with a bunch of people gaining it for themselves also than you'll probably ever have in that meeting.
That's cool.
One-on-ones are just, they call in either for an hour or an hour and a half. It's a paid call, and we look at the numbers, and I tell you what's going on in your life and why.
Right. And so how would you, like, what percentage of people are coming to you, like, one-on-one to understand themselves versus, like, a company?
Okay.
Like, would a manager come and say, like, assess all of my salespeople or, like, my HR department or what?
Absolutely. So I've got probably around 100 clients right now. And, of course, you end up at the end of the year looking back and you've got that 80-20 rule happening. So they all kind of go through this revolving door. I have clients that have stayed with me 10 years. So people come, they stay, and then once they get it, they understand some things, they don't need me until there's an issue. I have clients that are on retainer, so I'm on call basically for them as long as I can take the call. If not, we arrange it right away when I can soon get to that phone. But I'm on retainer. They have unlimited assessments, and they get 2 on-site visits, and that's a yearly retainer. And I work with their teams, with their managers. I help them hire their new salespeople or management. So critical hires, we run them through my system, and I will tell them exactly what they're likely going to get and how that's going to work out and how it's going to work with existing management based upon their behavioral analysis that are already within the organization. That's pretty powerful stuff because we want to hire once, not 3 times.
Amen. I've dusted off and I'm enhancing a program I've had, and I'm playing with the name. I own nomoresalesduds.com and also findyoursalespro.com. And actually bought a couple other domains over the weekend, like hire your next top earner or something like that. I bought a couple of them, but and I'm going to be linking to you through that because I have some verbiage and words for the advertisement, how to really recruit, how to put people through the ringer. But once they get through the gauntlet that I've created and have used for years, ultimately you got to test them. You got to do an assessment to really know the person, and that's why I'm so interested in what you're doing. So I want to have you on, and I mean, I've always been amazed by this, and this, like. When I started studying DISC and the Myers-Briggs years ago, that was really one of the hardest things for me to learn and internalize. But once I did, it was so powerful. I mean, I'm nowhere near your level, but I can tell how somebody answers the phone, and I will adjust my approach in that, 0.2 of a second.
Absolutely.
Based on background noise. Am I on speakerphone? Do they answer, Steven Sisler, or this is Steve, or you got Steven, or, Mr. Sisler, or just, hello, or operations, this is sales. I'll adjust in that microsecond. And so,
yes.
But I've never been, I'm not an expert at this, so I'm not good at teaching others that, but it's so important. They've got to be able to pick that up. And so that's why, I want my listeners to approach this from 2 angles. One is to know themselves and to get assessed. I mean, it's Sun Tzu, right? Art of War. Basically, if you don't know yourself, you don't know your enemy. Basically, you're going to lose every war. But if you know yourself and you know your enemy, victory is basically assured. And so I don't want people to think of the prospect as an enemy, but they kind of view us, the salesperson, as the enemy at first because they've been beaten up so much for the last 20 years by cheesy, pushy salespeople that don't know themselves. We have to understand that our prospects are basically suffering from sales PTSD, right? So that's why, so I want everybody listening to this to, approach it from several angles, really. So if you're a manager, think of this for something to do for your teams, do it for yourself. If you're an individual producer, you need to do this to understand yourself, and you need to understand this to understand the prospects that you're calling on. Now, you mentioned that a guy had you do an assessment on his girlfriend, but I mean, she had to take the test herself, right?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I've seen some people do things like some friends of mine here in town, and they don't do this anymore, but they had a handwriting analysis business. And they could grab clippings like from the news of somebody like the Virginia Tech shooter and people like that, and they could assess others, remotely from the handwriting, but that's rare.
Right.
But yours, they have to agree to do the test, so that's cool.
That's right.
So you're not like spying on people like that girlfriend. Gave her consent to be assessed.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and again, I ended up working with them a little bit too.
Yeah.
So the point I'm making is,
do you do this for just relationships, like marriage and marriage counseling and stuff?
I would say 70% of my clients, their whole family has been done.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And then, I have one client who goes back about 10 years. I did his children when they were in high school. I did his children when they entered college. In other words, now they're going to college because your behavior will change because your brain changes.
Right.
We are our brain. Nobody really thinks that, but that's how it works. And so, and then, getting a career. What would I be good at? I just got off the phone with a girl about 3 weeks ago. She sells diamonds for Tiffany's. And didn't like it. I looked at her profile. I knew something was really going on there. I said, "You're walking around like there are cameras on you at work." And she said, "Yeah, I'm being micromanaged like crazy. They're telling me this is how I need to sell rather than selling my own." I see what the company doesn't realize. If they let her sell her way, she'd sell double what she's doing now. But because she has to do it their way, she's now demotivated. So anyway, I called her the gypsy spirit because that was what I called her profile. Sometimes I'll just come up with a name for it. And that was 3-4 weeks ago now. She got an investor since then. She's talked to several people. She's looked at some property. She's opening a coffee shop called the Gypsy Spirit. So cool. She went from, I hate my job, I don't know what's wrong with me, to now she's found her passion, she's found a niche, she's going to have not a career, she's going to have a life.
Okay, cool.
One powerful hour right there.
And that's a two-edged sword there, because after my very first job, 6 months selling stocks and bonds at a company that didn't want me, then I landed at my real job. And it was selling mobile homes. And I did not go to 5 years of college and get 2 degrees to sell mobile homes, but that's where I ended up. And it turned out to be the best thing ever for my career. I made $100,000 my first 12 months, was promoted to manager in 14 months, but they had a very strict process, and we had to follow it. But you know what? It worked. And now, after many, many months and much success, I was allowed to kind of deviate, to kind of make it my own, but I still followed that process 80 to 90%, right? Maybe I didn't always use the flip chart, but I covered everything in it. So that's tough, like in her case, because when a sales organization, if they let everybody just do everything their way, there'd be no way to really measure and isolate the problems, when the inevitable downturn comes and the person's not hitting quota. Because if they're
agreed. I agree 100%. What happens is, though, it's so strict and restricting that it becomes trying to win a swim race while wearing a straitjacket.
Right.
That's what we want to eliminate. Of course, we can't just show up when you want, do what you want. That you're right, that won't work. But to know what kind of autonomy and freedom a person really needs to be more successful is key.
Right.
Some people don't even want to know what that is.
Right.
And that's fine, because the problem with some companies a lot of companies is they make enough money.
Right.
And therefore, there's not enough pain to look at what needs to happen with human beings.
Right.
Because most people aren't looking at the human beings.
Right.
They're looking at the numbers that the human beings are creating. The more you focus on the people, the better your company becomes.
Right.
But that's yesteryear.
Well, but it should be today. I mean,
I know. I mean, it's me against the world out here.
Hey, I'm with you, man. It's me and you against the world. All right.
All right.
All right. So should we turn the tables and put me in the spotlight? Is it time, or should I just end this interview now?
No, we can do that. This is going to be really fun and enlightening because there'll be people that are going to be identifying with some of this.
It was like my friends that did the handwriting analysis. This was probably, I don't know, eight years ago. And I told them, I said, I feel like I should type everything to y'all because I don't want you to, call the police on me if you find out something about me. And they're like, oh, just write it, send it to me. And And I told you, I think on email at least, that I had 3 assessments at the time on file, and I shared them all with my former VP of sales that I've known for many, many years. And he had said that handwriting was the most accurate out of like the HR Chally and another one. I think it was a standard disc, I think.
Right.
So it was amazing how accurate that was. So it was like just 2 or 3 sentences I wrote.
Yeah. Well, the value of an assessment is in the statement setting. Okay. I'll just say this before we get going here. Now, I've got some assessments that are going to be coming out. We've been working on them for several years now. But they'll be coming out. One of them's coming out this year. And it's the statement setting. So the algorithms for these things is public domain for the most part. And so you could get an algorithm and work it, and then you could, put statement sets to it and create or generate a report that has to go out, and it has to be evaluated. It has to be scrutinized. It has to be true. It has to work. You got to get rid of biases and all these different things that are processed into getting a full assessment that's working. But what separates great tools from other tools is the statement setting. In other words, when this is here and this is here emotionally, what does that mean? And then what does your report say? And so accuracy is really between the lines that are between the lines. So when people talk with me, the accuracy rate for one of my profiles is basically around 98%, which is really high. The report without me speaking is about 82.4% accurate. The reports that are coming out are going to be higher than that because of the statement setting. And so that's what really makes an analysis worth doing is who's reading it. Yeah. And how do they interpret these emotional sets? And how interesting are they able to say it in order to get your attention and get you to understand what
Yeah. I mean, so kind of like a doctor reading an x-ray.
That's right. There are some doctors that tell you you're fine and you go home with lymphoma.
Right.
This happens all the time. So people go to certain doctors. Then you have certain doctors that, this guy's the best in the country. Well, he uses a syringe just like this doctor does. He uses a stethoscope like that doctor does, but he ain't that doctor, let me tell you. And that's what's happened in the disc world or in the motivator world or whatever. You got a lot of people, they're really in this to sell the tool, but they're not deciphering it.
Right.
And many of them do not know how. They have no intellectual property on the matter.
Very interesting. I did not know that about being in the public domain.
Yeah.
All right, so you had said, I just want to make sure I got some notes here. 82.4% and 98.2% if you speak with them?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool.
Yep.
All right, so I took 2 assessments. So one was a behavior and one was passions. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay, and both were, 24 questions?
One was 12.
12 and 24 or something
one
like that?
One was about 24 with a couple things added in for, the government.
Okay.
So we know we're not biased.
Yeah.
Like, are you African American? Are you white? Are you Hispanic? That kind of thing.
Right. So overall, though, I mean, I don't think it took me more than 15 minutes maybe to take both assessments. Mm-hmm. I may or may not have been drinking a lot of bourbon. Okay, so it just depends on how the answers come out. If I admit to one or the other. Okay, so I'm gonna put that disclaimer.
Oh.
All right. So where shall we begin? I've got the behavioral report pulled up and the passions.
Okay.
And this is let me scroll through this 58-page report on the behavior. So very detailed. And the passions is just one. Interesting. Okay.
Well, no.
No?
The whole report is 58 pages.
Okay.
Some of that is passions. And I sent you just the pages.
Page 42 on the passion.
Graph on it.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so page 17 and page 42 have the graphs. So I'm a graph reader. So I'm a numbers guy. So I'm looking at 4 emotions that you possess.
Okay.
I'm looking at your natural set of emotions and your adapted set.
Okay.
So your natural set is you being your authentic self.
Okay.
And again, we don't know where that is. We just know that when it is, this is what you look like. And then I have you when you're working.
Gotcha.
And so the adapted set is your response to the work environment. So if you're crazy and outgoing and talkative and you don't pay attention, and then you go to work and you're working with bomb building material, your behavior is going to change.
Gotcha.
Because the environment demands it. So depending upon the environment, you got a person who's acting a certain way, they go to work, they think their boss hates them, their behavior completely changes.
Now, why would somebody outgoing like that take a job as a bomb detonation specialist?
Yeah, they likely wouldn't.
Okay.
But I use that to make the point of how circumstances dictate how your behavior is likely going to go.
Gotcha.
Because it has to. If you're outgoing and talkative and you're at a funeral, you're not telling jokes.
Right.
You're not going to get away with it there, even though you may want to.
Right.
You can't. You could, but it's going to backfire.
Sure.
So all human beings examine the environment and then make a determination as to how they're going to act within that environment in order to be successful in that environment. Now, some people don't care.
Right.
But they're what I call a level 3 human being. There's level 1, 2, and 3 people.
Right.
And so depending on what level you're on, level 2 people, they will put their overhead suitcase in the rack above their seat lengthwise.
And then I rip it out. I accidentally nudge it when I put mine in, and it falls on their head.
Yeah. And then if they're sitting in the aisle seat, they'll sit down and buckle themselves in and then have to unbuckle themselves 3 times while other people fill the seat. So that's a certain level of brain activity.
Now, is that because they're rude or they're just not thinking?
They're not accessing certain things in their brain, and therefore they're only seeing the instant, but they're not seeing a constant. They put their bag in the overhead bin, now it's full. There will be some people that will close the bin so other people aren't wasting their time thinking they're going to get their bag in there as they're getting on the plane. Because they're thinking not only of their own life, they're thinking of somebody else's life. Because we don't see people as they are, we see them as we are.
Right.
And so that changes the game.
I've literally in the last maybe year not only come to the realization, but started to do something about it, basically giving people the benefit of the doubt, because my initial response was always just to hop their butts. Mm-hmm. What an idiot, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, you know what? They're not thinking. Let me cut them some slack because getting mad doesn't help me or them.
Right. Well, living teaches you these things. Okay, your brain says this hasn't worked 66 times in the past. Why are you doing it again?
Right.
And now some people never get the memo, but some do. And when they do and they act on that, things change and therefore better their way. All right, let me start reading your numbers here. So let's look at your anger emotion. Okay, right. So I'm measuring on a scale of 0 to 100.
Where are we in the...
We're on page 17.
17, all right.
The behavior piece, which is displayed on a disc chart.
Okay.
It's a disc graph. D, I, S, and C are representative of 4 emotions in their primary. Anger is the D, optimism is the I, patience is the S, fear is the C.
Okay.
And so we're going to look at anger first. So your anger emotion is an 88.
Okay.
And you maintain it. It drops to an 87. 1 point's really not worth mentioning. So consistently, you're in 88. So when you're above 50 on this chart, then the energy of the behavior under discussion or the emotion under discussion is in play. So your anger emotion is consistently in play. In other words, you wake up mad.
Okay.
Okay. Now that doesn't mean you wake up with a scowl and you want to hit someone. That's not what anger is. Okay. Anger is an emotion that's in desperate need of a problem and a challenge. So if you don't have problems and challenges, Wes, you're going to create them because you need them.
Okay.
Okay. So you rise.
Now, is a problem, I guess a problem can be a challenge, but a challenge doesn't necessarily have to be a problem.
Right. It doesn't have to be a problem. Like a challenge could be beating your friend in push-ups, but that's not a problem.
Okay.
Okay. So problems, challenges, and opportunities. Those are the big 3 that we face every single day. You will face a problem, you will face a challenge, and you will face an opportunity likely every day and multiple times a day.
Now, you saying you meaning me or you
Everyone.
being human beings?
Human beings.
Okay, right.
You included. So everybody faces problems, challenges, opportunities,
Sure.
either once or multiple times a day, depending upon where you are, what you're doing, who you're doing it for, and who you're doing it with. So we're going to have these as human beings. So you need them. You need the problems and you need the challenges. You also need the opportunities. And so now some people don't need opportunities, but you do. So you need these things. So there's a part of your brain that sets itself up for them. So if they don't exist, you get bored. So what happens is your brain has nothing to do. You have nothing to overcome because you're an overcomer. Okay? So the anger emotion is the emotion that overcomes the problem and the challenge. And the anger emotion, when it's high, and you're high, then the things they need are outside of them. So you become what we call a taker. Okay? So your profile needs to take. What does this look like? So imagine playing football with your nieces and nephews on Thanksgiving in the backyard. So a very high dominant, low influence style will look at the 8-year-old and go, give me the ball. So they're in the heat of the moment. I need the ball. It's my turn to pass it, whatever. Give me the ball. That's a taker. The ball's outside of them. It's in his hands. I need to have it in my hands. What's the quickest way to get that done? So that's what they do. So if they're a surviving style, there are 2 kinds of people, thrivers or survivors.
Well, usually, before you go on, usually I sack the 8-year-old,
Yeah.
cause a fumble, and then take the ball.
Okay, so that's interesting. Even if you're in jest there, that's an interesting point. Because how you go about doing what you need will determine the level of excess and who likes you. Okay?
Now, actually, after 7 kids, I just want a beer and want to be left alone.
Yeah, I get it. So this dominant piece is a taking orientation. Your style survives by controlling. You thrive by creating. Okay? So depending on if you're a survivor or a thriver, a person will take, over control, or they will take in a way that creates, synergy between the two.
That's interesting. So survives by controlling, thrives by creating. I mean, that's So, right. I mean, that's why I left the Air Force. Right? I mean, I look back and it's like, how did I make it through the Air Force without getting court-martialed? I mean, I hated taking orders.
Yeah.
Hated it as an employee, I started this business because I was always trying to get better, right? And I was always working for people I didn't see as being worthy of my respect and following. I had a handful of bosses ever that I really respected and looked up to, right?
Yeah.
But you're right. I love writing. I love, blogging, making videos, making podcasts,
Yeah, you're a creator.
I love this stuff.
Yeah. Okay, let's look at your influence emotion, which is optimism. You're coming in at an 88 again. So this makes you visionary style, because now I'm combining the anger and the optimism together. So if you were anger alone, okay, you'd probably have an attachment disorder. And that just means when it came to both or one parent, there wasn't enough emotional stimulation out of 9 things a child needs from a parent, which is guide, guard, govern, direct, correct, protect, cherish, nourish, admonish. If you don't get all 9, then you've got some things you're going to be dealing with. If you don't get 3, you'll need coaching. And so the more you receive in the formative years, the healthier your brain is going to be for relationship management.
Cool.
Okay. The less you receive, the more difficult managing relationships becomes. Sometimes it's like washing your feet with your socks on. It just feels weird. And there's things that are getting missed. And through trial and error, people can figure it out, or some people don't. And that will depend on whether they're level 1, 2, or 3.
Right.
So with you, it's like having a dead body in the family room, but you have a pretty blanket over it. Okay, so some people, they're just the dead body in the family room. Nobody wants to go in there and see that boss. You know that principal or that teacher or that boss. I need to see you in 10 minutes. You're like, please, is there a way out of this? I don't want to go in there. It's very frightening, regardless of your age. That could be an attachment issue with that individual, because when you go in there, you leave missing things in your heart because they took it all. That would be Robert Duvall in Apocalypse Now.
Okay, so go
or
back.
Or Steve Jobs.
So I'm kind of lost here. So having the high optimism with the high anger
changes everything.
So
you have a dead body in the family room, meaning when your fuse runs out, it's big.
Right.
Okay. But when you have a pretty blanket over the dead body, I can take it.
Oh, gotcha.
So you will...
I can take it, or people
you
can take
me? You can tell me off with a smile.
Okay.
Okay? In other words, when you're done, you're done.
Yes.
But the way you do it keeps the relationship from completely falling apart, as a rule.
Very cool.
Okay? So here's why. You have 3 fears. Number 1, not being liked.
Okay.
Number 2, failing. And number 3, being mischaracterized. Okay? So because you have those 3 fears, just in your limbic system alone, not your rational brain, because you don't go there very often. You're in your limbic system, you're in your fight, freeze, or flight center, which is your middle brain. That's where you spend most of your time. And you are intuitive and instinctive. You likely know more and do more by accident than some people are trying to do or know on purpose with this profile. Okay? So you instinctively know, but then you're not sure because you don't have the data.
Mm-hmm.
So people like you cram for an exam.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, you wait till Thursday, your test is on Friday. You do nothing all week but hang out and have fun. But at midnight, you open the books for 2 hours, 3 hours, laser focus, get it down, close the book, go in, take the test, get an A-. But if I sprung that exam on you in 1 month without telling you it was coming, you'd get a D.
Mm-hmm.
because you study for the instant, not the constant.
Right.
Your brain has this ability to think on your feet very, very quickly. You pull rabbits out of hats, but you don't know where the rabbit came from. Okay? So this is like a Bill Clinton style. Okay? He's less dominant, but he's a high influence. You may hate Bill Clinton, but if you're on an elevator with him, by the time you get to the 5th floor, you're likely going to be taking selfies. And it's magic. Okay, you have that piece, but you also have that driving, get it done, I need results or I'm not doing it.
Yes.
Piece. You got both of them going on.
Yep.
So that's a visionary who knows where he's going, but he doesn't know how he's going to get there. So that's the rule. Now, does that mean you can't learn how to get there? No. It just means as you take off, you left your compass at home. As a rule. So
that's so funny.
Your style is to jump off the cliff and build your wings while you're falling. That's how you do it. And you will build better wings like that than any other way.
Right.
Because if you were preparing for a talk, you'd change it 10 times in a week. But if you prepare it the night before, you won't change it at all.
Man, I just gave a talk 15 days ago, May 1st, and I changed that thing 100 times.
Yep. So the best thing for you to do is not address it until the night before.
Yep.
Because you'll be less nervous, you'll be more on your game, and more confident. Because the more you change it, the less confident you start to feel. Mm-hmm. You by the time you've changed it 100 times, you don't believe you know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that.
See what I mean?
Yeah.
That's what you're thinking. You got too much in there now. It's all you've had this and then that. Your brain's going to remember that. Remember last Tuesday you thought of that point. Do we need that one right now? Like all that's going to happen. So it turns into this bee's nest. But if you do nothing and relax and go fishing and have fun all week, and then the night before, all that passion will come together for one talk. Mm-hmm. And it'll change everything on how you give a speech.
Well, the funny thing is, I don't do a lot of selling from the stage, but they wanted me to. Mm-hmm. Because, just speaking, hand me a microphone, I'll go talk for, 2 days. Sure. But to craft this message beginning to end to a natural conclusion and it didn't feel pressured or cheesy, I worked on that forever.
Yeah.
Because I haven't done that a bunch.
Okay, so that makes sense. But you still could have put something together the night before and had less noise in your head when you gave it.
Sure.
And that's the rules. See, there are always rules to the games, and then there are exceptions to the rules.
Right.
All right, let's look at your patience. Your patience is coming in at a 16, so you don't have any.
Oh, that's terrible. We're done with this interview.
Uh-huh. Now, when you're working, it's a 2.
That's so funny.
Okay, so this is what we call an outlier. Because you have lines below 10 and almost 90. So you are less than 2% of the population. So less than 2 out of 100.
So what does that mean when I'm working, my patience is 2%?
Okay, it means you are what we call hyper flexible. Okay, you are a Corvette going 90 down the expressway, and I call you up and you answer hands-free, and I say, Wes, your exit is exit 94B. You glance up, and it's right in front of you.
And I make it.
Because of the car you're in, you can get off the road. You understand what I mean by that?
Right.
Now, some people are a train. And I say, your exit is 94B. They can't do anything because they're on a track. If we want to use vehicles that can roll down the highway, they're an 18-wheeler. They can't turn without tipping over or jackknifing. So your opposite profile has to go to the next exit, which is 4 miles down the road, downshift 14 times, get off, navigate the light in the intersection, go under the overpass, get back on, now go south 6 miles,
Right.
get back on, doing all those downshifting, upshifting, all that, to meet you at the restaurant. You're done eating, going, where were you? And they're speechless.
That it's interesting though, because like patience, like when I initially hear that, it's like, okay, that guy doesn't want to get anything done, or like wants it done like right now. But I've written a 700-page book. I make big slide decks and training tutorials. Now I am brutally impatient,
right?
Like with things that should work and they aren't. Right? It's like, why is this not working? This is something fundamental. This is basic.
You're hyper flexible. Impatience is only displayed when things, situations, and people can't flex with you.
Gotcha. That is
so. If you're writing
true.
a book and everything's smooth, you got the time to do it, you're setting it aside, it's all working, you don't see the, quote, impatience or hyper flexibility. But if your phone rings, if you get interrupted, you may not like it, but you can do it because you have 6 arms.
Mm-hmm.
So you can paint the ceiling, wash the dog, fry an egg all at the same time.
Right.
So you have this hyper flexibility. If you're married, likely you married a stabilizer.
She's very stabilizer.
Okay, so this is because the Jordan River tends to marry the Dead Sea. See, with you, it's whitewater. With your spouse, it's a still lake. So let's say you're both in a canoe. She gets in the canoe, she puts on a life jacket, she sits down, she puts an oar in the water. You get in the canoe, you're not wearing a life jacket, and you're walking around. That's the emotional difference.
Right.
So you destabilize the environment. When you show up into the environment, she stabilizes an environment when she shows up into an environment.
Hey, somebody has to sack that 8-year-old and teach them about how to look both ways and avoid the sack, okay?
Mm-hmm.
It's vital, man. It's so important.
Okay. So at work, you are doing a lot. You get a lot going on. So all 6 arms are in fluid motion. That's dropping down from a 16 to a 2. And you are extremely quick. You got a very short fuse. Now, that doesn't mean you're a jerk. It means you have a very short fuse. You can make a decision in an instant. So you're very good in the instant. You're not very good in the constant. You are what I call a rhinoceros. They run 30 miles per hour, but they can only see 31 feet. So you see what happens.
All right.
Now, let's look at your fear emotion. You're a 30. So you have a low awareness of errors and mistakes. Okay? So when you're playing hockey on the ice, your brain believes you're in a hockey rink on ice that you cannot fall through. Okay? When you adapt, that even gets stronger. So you end up extremely what we call independent of rather than dependent on. So you need to be in a position wherever you are to display your independence. So if you were giving a speech and following a teleprompter and the teleprompter broke, nobody would know it. Okay, Bill Clinton, George Bush, Joe Biden. If Barack Obama is giving a speech and the teleprompter breaks, Al Gore giving a speech, teleprompter breaks, everybody knows it.
Mm-hmm.
He loses his way because he needs a roadmap. You don't. Why? I told you, you make it up as you go. So if Bill Clinton's teleprompter breaks, now he gets to give the speech he wanted to give earlier. But his people wouldn't let him. And now he has an excuse, so he's going to get forgiveness. Whereas Al Gore needs permission.
That's why I always tip the teleprompter operator.
Yeah.
Okay. At 3 minutes, 18 seconds, unplug this thing.
So you live an independent life.
Yes.
You live an independent life with no fear of errors and mistakes. So you will learn more through trial and error than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that didn't work out. So your brain says, well, let's try not to do that again. But then the next time it comes around, your optimism kicks in. You believe it won't be that way this time, and you try it again, and it still doesn't work. And then over time, you're like, I'm getting tired of this not working, so I'm not going to do it. It's not because you don't believe it will. It's because you're not getting good results.
Right.
So you stop. That's your profile there. So you are a visionary, and you're basically, you live in a sense of rebellion. You have this I'll show you attitude as a whole. That's what drives you. It's almost like somebody told you couldn't, and the rest of your life you're going to prove you can. That's the emotional driving force that pushes you forward. Now, for the sake of time, I want to get into your passion palette. You are what we call a high power line, which means you have a need to control your destiny and the destiny of anybody who you believe will have an effect on your destiny. So you are what we call large and in charge. So you live in a sense of where am I going, not where have I been. Your brain lives in the future. You check in with the present, but you've already left in your brain. So you could be talking to me at a party, you're in the conversation 1 minute, and somebody who you've been waiting for walks in the room. Even though you talked to me for 3 more minutes, you were done as soon as you saw that person, and you were already in the other conversation as a rule.
Yeah, but you were the one I was waiting on, okay? Let's be clear.
Uh-huh. Now, you may be able to fool them because you're good at this, but that's what's going on in the brain. So people like you are what we call the movers and the shakers, because you're moving forward and you're shaking down things as a rule. And this is a typical profile for people with a lot of energy and with adult attention deficit. Anyway, sorry about that. So you've got that going really, really strong, which means you can focus on everything, but you can hyper-focus on something, which is why you could pound out the 700-page book,
right?
Even though you're impatient. But if I interrupt you during that time, when you're pounding out pages, that's likely going to be a little bit of a problem for me.
Yeah.
Okay, so you got this high control need. You want authority that's equal to or greater than your responsibility, which makes you what we call an owner. So you own everything that's got your name on it. You also need a ladder to climb. Sky is the limit with you. You need to remove the ceiling. If you have a ceiling, you're going to break your neck. And so you're looking into outer space with kind of no bounds, no guardrails, no rules, just right. So you have what we call a low systemic mindset. How well do you understand how your choices and decisions are working with established structures, established rules, protocols? You probably know exactly how they're working with that. But you look at each rule and each structure and make a determination as to whether or not it's worthy of you. Okay? So you'll look at that. Oh, that is a real dumb rule. I don't know who made that, but we're going to fix his wagon. That's how your brain works. So you can work with established structures and rules. So you live by what we call by the book. The only difference is it's your book. It's not mine. This is a high need for autonomy. You look emotionally like a person who's in prison and wants to get out. So you're looking through the bars at the soccer game and you're like a star soccer player. And so that emotion of, I've got to get out of here to go there so I can do that, is a constant driver in everything you do. So you have a very strong presenting profile. You actually look like a teacher here. This is a teaching profile. This is like a professor profile, to be honest. Also, you have a heightened suspicion emotion. In other words, it's almost like everybody's guilty until proven innocent with you. Now, people likely don't know any of this. In other words, you're like the parent with eyes in the back of their head. You know, it's like you are expecting this to go sideways likely, or that you likely keep an emotional distance from other people, even though you can be the star of the show. Like, hey, Bob, what's up, buddy? How you doing? There's still an emotional distance there, but nobody's going to know it because behavior trumps the passion. Behavior is what people see and experience. The passion we see over a long term. And so you're very suspicious. So getting into your inner circle, I'd have to qualify. I feel like I'm in, but I'm not. I got to qualify for that. You just don't let people in there. Your style just doesn't do it. Almost like in the past you've been burned. That's the emotion. Is that making sense?
Oh, man. Especially in business. I can't tell you.
Okay.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. So although you're like, oh, great, Wes is here, great, da-da-da-da, there's a person inside of you standing back, arms folded, looking around, your eyes darting left to right. What did he mean by that? That's all going on, even though I think I'm your best friend. Like, you have mastered this, Wes. You also believe there's more than one way to skin a cat. So you have a multi-threaded approach to solving complex problems. This is a fantastic profile, by the way.
And for the record, I did not pay you.
Yeah, no, there's no money exchanged here. You also look to me like you have an above average intelligence. Your brain never shuts off. So you may come home or maybe work from home, wherever you are, and now it's 5:30 in the evening. You're now engaging with children, wife, this kind of a thing. Your brain's still like going. And you're trying to juggle the both of them, what you're thinking, what you're doing. So you could be easily distracted because of this. Your brain doesn't rest very well because it requires more and more information, but that information has to be brand new. In other words, you didn't know it before. So if you're a television watcher, you may watch like the History Channel. Or you will likely watch something that doesn't entertain you, but teaches you something.
Yep.
So that's why you're a teacher. Okay? Because you understand what it is to be taught. So you likely can take a complex situation, break it down, make it palatable, and give it in a very unique way to an audience, let's say.
Yep.
You may not do a lot of this, but I'm saying you could. And you'd probably be able to command high dollar for it.
Yep.
Because of your profile. You have to regather everybody every 7 minutes that's watching. And you can do that without thinking. So very powerful presenting or speaking profile here. Also, you're very competitive, but you're more competitive within yourself than you are with other people. And so you ask yourself this question: what am I getting out of this? Before you enter any kind of anything, before you do anything, you're asking yourself, what am I getting out of this? You don't like moochers. You don't like it when other people take credit for your ideas. You won't like it if you see somebody on your team that's not pulling their own weight. You are very grounded in the sense that your feet are on the ground as opposed to your head being in the clouds. You are also likely coming up with unique ways of saying things. In other words, you think what we call outside of the box. You likely have what we call unconventional clarity. In other words, there's 20 people looking at something, you included, and you're the only one that sees the potential. So you have this unlimited clarity that causes this out-of-the-box ideological viewpoints in everything you see. Like being able to spot animals in the clouds. You have that ability, so when you're walking and looking and seeing things, it's like the Matrix. Smith got to the point where he could live in both worlds. That's what you're like. You can see in multiple dimensions. And so when you're working with something, you may set an idea in stone on Monday. Here's what we're going to do. I've been thinking about this a long time, yada, yada, yada. And then on Wednesday, you change it because you saw beyond something Tuesday. Now, there are some people, they make a decision on Monday, it never changes for the rest of their life. You are fluid, not static. Your brain is always moving. You are always thinking, rethinking, analyzing, and tweaking. So you live in a fluid motion, which can be very beneficial as a creating person, but then also it can be very destabilizing. People like that can move around and not stay in one place. They move from this job to that job to this idea to that idea. There's a lot of fluidity, and it makes your brain feel really good, but people that attach to you emotionally are always coming with you. And if they're static and you're fluid like this, then they feel pulled in many directions. Is that making sense?
Oh, yeah.
So, but anyway, so very powerful. So basically, you are an owner style that needs freedom and autonomy. No straitjackets allowed. Suspicious, careful. You're a visionary. You're very flexible. You're independent of, not dependent on. So working for yourself, calling your own shots, making your own clock, all those things will work really well for you. But if you're not careful, you'll have so many multiples going on that you become a jack of all and a master of none if you're not careful. And of course, depending upon your age and going through all these different situations, your style blooms after age 47. You're more buckshot than bullet.
47?
Yeah.
I have 10 and a half months to go.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you're on the cusp here of going from this buckshot approach to more of a bullet approach. By the time you hit 50, you likely have cleared some vegetables off your plate. You got one or two things only, and you're becoming more and more expert. By the time you're into your mid-50s, you're likely doing one thing better than anybody else on the planet. And then you can start capitalizing on that. So as you get older, you get better. You're like wine. Some people, they're better right out of the gate. They're as better as they're ever going to get.
So can I borrow like $5 million from you now, and I will pay that back with interest in 7 years?
That's the concept. Now, depending upon several other factors, your role direction, your role awareness, and your self-direction will determine how this is going to go. In other words, how well you understand who you are in your world and how well you understand where you're going. In other words, do you have a roadmap or do you have a hunch? So if you have a roadmap, the chances of you arriving exactly where you need to be increase dramatically. If you just have a hunch, then they don't. You could, if you've ever used your navigator and then there's new bridges being built in a city, and now your navigator's got you like in outer space, you're on a road that doesn't even exist, and you're like, what happened? Well, it wasn't updated yet. That can happen to you in real life. Mm-hmm. Because you don't update the navigator. You only update it when you need to, like when you're forced to.
Right.
So you can have this idea, get out there, and all of a sudden you don't know where you are. So the more mapping you do and the more skills you pull on that are lower, actually, in your framework, even though you hate it and it's difficult, it's actually going to ensure a greater result. That might be having somebody you whiteboard with that holds you accountable to an idea or a place. But anyway, that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Well, I mean, this thing is just totally off. We're got to end this. Man, I've been... When there's a delay, it's because I'm putting you on mute and I'm typing.
Oh, okay.
This is... I always tell people on my podcast, I'm like, go back and listen multiple times because you'll miss things. But it's like now I'm telling myself I need to listen to this. I'm going to give this to Carlos working with me. I'm going to give this to my wife. I'm like, okay, yeah. I know y'all never listen to my stuff, but go listen to this one.
Yeah. And listen, when it comes to relationships with people, when we listen to other people, we're doing it for one of three reasons or two of three reasons. We either listen to direct and control, we listen to agree or disagree, or we listen to understand where they're coming from. As a rule, your brain's default setting is to listen to direct and control. Second, you listen to agree or disagree. In other words, if you came home to your wife and she's upset to something that happened that day, within a minute or less, you know what she could have done, you know what she should have done. You know what went wrong and why, and then you're starting to your brain's getting excited that you can now teach her this. But likely because she's a stabilizer, that's the last thing she wants to hear.
After 20 and a half years of marriage?
Stare at her and say, oh my God, that's horrible. And offer no advice.
Yes. After 20 and a half years of marriage.
You figured it out. Right? You figured it out. I think I lost you. I don't know if I'm recording.
Oh, no. We are. I had muted. I'm sorry about that.
Oh, you're muted.
I was saying after 19 and a half years, I learned that. So the last year of marriage has been really kind of peaceful.
Yeah. You see, because now you're really realizing that she wants empathy.
Yep.
Okay. Sympathy. So sympathy is understanding how they feel. Empathy is feeling what they feel. When you can enact those two with her, that's going to be a good night. But your style is a fixer.
Yep.
So you're always looking for the problems. And again, if you don't have any, you'll create them because you like to fix them. So this is a human being that skis in the avalanche zone just so they dig out when it caves in.
Mm-hmm.
And then they brag about how easy it was. So that's kind of what your brain is after all the time. And you'll do it with everybody, even the people you care about deeply. Mm-hmm. But if they're a different style, they look at you like an aborigine staring at a Ferris wheel. They don't know why you're doing that, what's going on, and why don't you understand them. And this is with anybody. So it's really powerful to understand yourself so you can manage it, and then understand the key people in your life so you can manage that relationship. And the better you do that, the better off everybody is, and then we all win together.
So is this also, kind of some of the Sun Tzu, know yourself, know your enemy? I mean, when somebody knows themselves better, are they able to pick up the prominent or dominant styles of the prospect to adjust accordingly, or is this more for like teamwork?
Well, this could be used for anything. I mean, I go into companies and will teach people how to read their client in under 3 minutes. That's one of the things I do. So in other words, understanding yourself and understanding others, because there's only 4 types. There's not a lot to know. We know something can mean everything in the right moment. And so understanding that certain people need you to listen, other people need you to engage, other people need you to control. It depends on who they are and being able to spot it using, watching for body language, words, cues, stance, their eyes. All the clues about a human being is typically on their face to begin with. There are some people, like probably your wife, are very difficult to read. Okay? You don't know. It's the poker face. You don't know where they're at. There are some people, they're the dog you're not sure you can pet.
Mm-hmm.
Then there are other people, they're like a beagle. There's no fear there. You just get down on one knee, play with those little velvet ears, and everything's great. You don't have any fear of that dog going at you. Okay? But if you're looking at a pit bull lab mix, black with a scar on his nose, and he's staring at you, you don't go over there because you don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
Good or bad. But the stands up, tail wagging, head down, you're like, okay, that's a good signal. See, this is what people do. Animals, their brains, They don't have a rational mind. They only have the reptile brain and the limbic system. And so what they do is they discover two things: approach or avoid. That's it. Like a white-tailed deer. Approach or avoid. That's all they know. Now, we do that. It's called effective primacy. Do I approach or do I avoid? And we make that distinction within nanoseconds. And then we act on it. And then our rational mind is going to go along with your limbic idea, which is why we'll defend a political candidate, no matter how stupid, all the way to the death. Because our rational mind is agreeing with a limbic feeling. And we can't break the connection. So people that vote for Donald Trump or people that vote for Hillary aren't stupid. They're not stupid. What they're doing is seeing the world a certain way according to their brain. They saw certain things that meant certain things to them. They attach themselves to it and they ride the horse until it dies. And that's how humans create tribes. And so this is how it works. And so even in religion, like Christianity, for example, you get into Christianity and you think, okay, we believe this. No, we don't. There's 41,000 offshoots, denominations in Christianity alone. Why? Because the brains are so different in people. So all these beliefs aren't real. We're not all agreeing on the same thing. Now we have, you can only baptize like this. You can only do it like that. We all are looking for personal identity, separation. We're creating tribes within tribes within tribes within tribes. And it'll never end. It always does. This is what we all do. And the brilliant people that control the world capitalize on it. Mm-hmm. So 3% of a culture can change the entire culture because it's wrapped up in education, government, and media. That's it. That's 3% of the nation. So if they're all in agreement, so goes the entire nation. And you could have 290 million people disagreeing, and it's still going to go that way.
Right.
Because all the brains are affected. Anyway, it's a big subject. But this is very powerful stuff. So knowing this, knowing your people, knowing how people differ, capitalizing on it, very, very powerful for moving forward in the world and getting where you want to go, doing what we want to do and all that.
Yep. That is amazing. And
So listen, I got a book called The 4 People Types and What Drives Them. It's about 300 and some odd pages. If you review it, I hope you keep the party going. I don't have anything less than 5 stars on that book. Okay. And so this book breaks down the 4 people types in such a way that if you get into that book and learn it, you too will read a person in under 3 minutes.
All right. And where can we get that? On your website or Amazon?
Yeah, it's on Amazon.
Okay.
Yeah. Amazon. You just type in Steven Sisler into Amazon, and I've got a whole page in there.
All right. We will link to that, and it's Steven with a V, and it's the 4 people types and what drives them. All right. I'll be ordering that in just a second. And then, of course, we'll link to everything as well, stevesisler.org and behavioralresourcegroup.com. Well, this has been fantastic. Any parting words of wisdom for our listeners?
Be yourself. Everybody else is already taken.
Everybody else is taken, huh?
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, sir. This has been quite enlightening.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure.
All right, man. Have a great day.
You too.
So was this a good thing I published this episode? I think so. Despite Steven breaking me down, it was good stuff. And, the teacher learns more than the student. I'm sitting here going over my notes that I took from the call, re-listening to it, looking at the test results, and I'm learning. I'm learning about myself. And I've told these stories many times. When I first started learning how to golf, when I got serious about it, my dad got me golf lessons when I turned 23. I'd never really played golf before that. And I was hooked. I played through the summer, and then late that summer, I went and got lessons from a guy that actually recorded me. And he took shots simultaneously from above, from behind, and from in front. And I only swung the club about 5 times. And it was a 30 or 45-minute lesson. And that's all. 5 swings of the club. And then we analyzed the swing from then on. When I got serious about selling and marketing and persuasion. I went to a event where they, for learning professional communications, and this was 15 years ago at least, or 12 to 15 years ago. And they record you, and they had VCRs back then. They gave you a VHS tape, and after your 3 or 5 minute talk, it wasn't super long, but you had to go and watch yourself. You watched yourself alone, but it was quite illustrative. And then when I got serious about sales training and I hired a coach, I had to buy this device that plugged onto my phone, and it recorded the conversation. And then I think I only sat through a couple of those with Steve, and just 2 of them were so informative. I could hear myself using weak words. I could hear my tonality, my volume, my pace, my indecision just screaming out at me. Now, didn't help that Steve was there as well, but I guess it did. But you know what I mean. I was able to critique myself because I recorded it and could review it. And then having an expert accelerate it, make me focus, and then give me options, give me alternatives, ways to improve, ways to avoid the mistakes, and then ways to do things right. It's not enough just to know what not to do. You need to know what to do as well. And so going through this with Stephen is just like that. I've never really gone into this much detail. I've taken many, many tests. The DISC assessments, Myers-Briggs, Trimetrics, HR, Tally, I think it's called. I've had a handwriting analysis. So I've gone through a lot of these. I've done I think I'm an ENTJ, if I remember correctly. I took a class years ago. But going through this and having someone review it with me is so informative. Now I've got his book. If you go to thesaleswhisperer.com/session 199, you'll see links to Stephen's website, to his personal site, his business site, as well as his book. You can order his book. He self-published it, and this thing is meaty. So if you are serious about knowing what makes you tick, and if you're serious about being able to determine quickly what makes your prospects tick, so you can adjust how you sell, because we as salespeople have to adjust our selling style to match the buying style of the prospect. The 6th of the 7 deadly sins of selling is what I call the Stepford salesperson. And that means, it's like the Stepford wives, right, where everybody was a robot. When you act like a robot, when you treat everybody the same, you're going to win 20 to 30% of your sales. Because that's roughly what percentage of the population you get along with naturally. You have to learn how to adjust your selling to match the buying styles of the buyer, or that's all you will ever achieve. So again, if you're serious about growing, if you're serious about the profession of sales, you'll become a student of human nature. You'll become a student of yourself. It's that important. Okay? As I mentioned at the top of the show, got a couple of new resources for you, whisperwebinar.com. Check that out. You can sign up for my free webinars that I'm doing now on various topics. Right now I'm focusing on the Make Every Sale program and then the Fix Your Follow-Up Failure. So those will be either one a week, one every other week. I may be alternating them. So it's still a little bit up in the air, but I will be doing a lot more live, interactive, free webinars. And then also get me in your app, in your hip, in your head with my own app. It's Wes, W-E-S, app, A-P-P, wesapp.info. It's free. Works on all smartphones. You will dig it. Thanks for listening. Please leave a comment, rate the show, share it, and remember to sell different.